From the ashes of the old world comes a chrome rebirth, shining with the light of innovation and a brand new spirit. Experience the powerful transformation of characters as they embrace the future with open arms. Subscribe today and witness the birth of a brand new era in storytelling.
The morning I came home from my brother's funeral in Boise, I didn't expect to find my life had been rearranged while I was away grieving. I had been gone 11 days. 11 days to sit with loss, to sort through my brother Raymond's belongings, to say goodbye to the last person alive who remembered our childhood, who remembered our mother's cooking, who remembered me before I became anyone's father or anyone's husband. 11 days of quiet grief, long drives through Idaho flatlands, phone calls with lawyers, and sleeping in a bed that smelled like a stranger's house. I drove the 4 hours back to Milford, Tennessee with the windows cracked, listening to nothing. No radio, no podcasts, just road noise and my own breathing. By the time I pulled into my driveway on Carpenter Lane, the October light was turning amber and the old oak by the mailbox had gone half gold. I sat in the truck for a moment, just looking at the house. The white siding I'd repainted 2 summers ago. The porch where my wife Margaret had kept her rocking chair until the day she died. The detached workshop behind the house where I had spent 30 years of weekend mornings. My son Derek's car was in the driveway. His wife Sandra's SUV was parked beside it. I hadn't asked them to house sit. I hadn't asked them to do anything. I'd told my son I was going to bury my brother and I'd be back when I was back. I wasn't alarmed. Derek had a key for emergencies. I figured they'd stop by to check on the place, maybe water the plants on the porch. Margaret's plants. I still kept them alive. I didn't know why exactly, but I did. I grabbed my bag from the truck bed and walked up the front steps. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and immediately something was different. I couldn't name it in the first second. It was a feeling more than a sight, the way a room feels when someone else has been living in it. Some invisible residue of another person's presence rearranged in the air. Then I started to see it. The console table in the entryway, the one Margaret and I had bought at an estate sale in Chattanooga on our anniversary trip in 2003, was gone. In its place was a narrow IKEA shelf I'd never seen before. On top of it was a succulent in a white ceramic pot and a basket of Sandra's mail. Her mail. In my entryway. I set my bag down slowly. Derek? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Footsteps from the kitchen. Sandra appeared first, wearing an apron I didn't recognize, carrying a dish towel. She smiled at me the way you smile at someone who's come to the wrong party. Victor, you're back. We didn't expect you until tomorrow. I drove straight through. I looked past her into the kitchen. Something was on the stove. Something that smelled like her cooking. Not mine. Where's the table from the entryway? She waved her hand. Oh, that old thing was taking up so much space. We put it in the garage. I looked at her for a moment. I kept my face still. I'd spent 40 years as an engineer. I'd learned early that you don't show your hand until you understand the full scope of what you're looking at. Where's Derek? Upstairs. He's been working from home this week. She turned back toward the kitchen. Are you hungry? I made pot roast. I walked upstairs without answering. Derek was in the guest room, my guest room, sitting at a desk I'd never seen, surrounded by 2 monitors and a mess of cables. He had a Bluetooth headset around his neck and a coffee mug that said "Best Dad Ever," which struck me as strange since his kids were 6 and 4 years old and couldn't read yet. He looked up when I came in. Dad. Hey, you made good time. What's going on in my house, Derek? He shifted in his chair. He had my build, my jawline, but Margaret's eyes, soft and dark, and right now they couldn't quite meet mine. We talked about this. We did not talk about this. You said it would be fine if we stayed here while the foundation work was happening at our place. I had said that. 3 months ago, I'd said they could stay for 2 weeks, while their contractor fixed a cracked foundation. That was in July. It was now October. I'd been so consumed by Raymond's illness and then his death that I hadn't fully registered how long they'd been here. 2 weeks had become 3 months without my explicit permission, and apparently without anyone feeling the need to ask. 2 weeks, I said. I said 2 weeks. The contractor kept pushing back the timeline. Sandra's been handling a lot of the house stuff while you were away. She's really made it feel comfortable here. He said it like that was a gift. I went back downstairs. I walked through the dining room and into the living room, and then through the back door into the yard. I went to my workshop. I had built that workshop myself, over 3 weekends in 1994, with my brother Raymond and my neighbor, Carl Hutchins. It was 20 feet by 24 feet, insulated, with a wood stove in the corner and a workbench along the full length of the south wall. It held 30 years of my tools, my father's hand planes, my grandfather's level, the dollhouse I'd been building for my granddaughter's birthday. And along the back wall, on shelves I'd built specifically for them, Margaret's things. Not all of them, just the ones I couldn't bear to keep in the house after she died, because looking at them every day was a kind of beautiful, unbearable pain. Her mother's china, the cedar chest that had been in her family since 1920, her grandmother's quilt collection, folded and stored in labeled boxes. I unlocked the workshop door and pushed it open. The workbench was cleared. Not organized, cleared. My tools had been moved to the floor, some of them loose, some in a pile near the door, as if they'd been dumped rather than placed. The dollhouse I'd spent 6 weeks on was in the corner, half covered by a tarp. And Margaret's shelves. The shelves I'd built for Margaret's things were empty. The china, the cedar chest, the quilts. Gone. I stood very still in the doorway of my workshop and breathed. I did not go back inside immediately. I walked around the outside of the workshop to the small storage area where I kept seasonal items. The cedar chest was there, outside, on the ground, not covered, exposed to the October air. Beside it were 3 of Margaret's quilt boxes, one of them open, the quilt inside slightly damp from the previous night's rain. I crouched down and touched the quilt, the one Margaret's grandmother had hand-stitched in 1943. A double wedding ring pattern in blues and creams. It was cold and damp at one corner. I stayed crouched there for a long time. Then I went back inside. Sandra was plating food at the kitchen counter, moving with the easy confidence of someone in their own home. She'd rearranged the spice rack. She'd replaced the dish drying mat with a different colored one. There were her children's school papers held to my refrigerator by magnets I'd never bought. "Sandra," I said. My voice was quiet. I'd learned long ago that the quieter I spoke, the more people listened. "Where are Margaret's things from the workshop?" She didn't stop plating the food. "The shelves in there were taking up half the workshop space. You couldn't even move in there. I thought since it was sitting empty while you were away, it might be a good time to reorganize. Margaret's china. It's in the garage. The quilts." She paused then. "Just briefly. They're outside. I needed the boxes for some stuff Derek and I brought over. Don't worry. I put a tarp over. You put them outside." I wasn't asking. Margaret's grandmother's quilts. Outside. "Victor, they're fine." "They are not fine. One of them is damp." Derek had come downstairs. He was standing in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed in a way that was meant to look casual but wasn't. "Dad, Sandra was just trying to make the space more functional. You haven't used that workshop in months. I was in Idaho burying my brother. Before that, too. Before Raymond got sick, you weren't. That is not the point." I looked at my son. I looked at him the way I used to look at a blueprint when I found an error, not with anger, but with the specific attention of someone who needs to understand exactly where things went wrong. "This is my house. That is my workshop. Those are your mother's belongings, and I come home to find them outside in the rain." Sandra set down the serving spoon. "I think you're overreacting. We've been living here for 3 months, Victor. We've been paying your utilities, taking care of the yard. I didn't ask you to pay my utilities. I'm just saying we've been contributing. This is a family home. Derek grew up here. It's not like we're strangers." There it was. The logic that I'd suspected was underneath all of this. The sense that, because Derek had grown up in this house, it somehow belonged to them too. That their presence here was not a courtesy extended by me but a right earned by blood. I looked at my daughter-in-law. She was 41 years old. She was smart, organized, and since the day she and my son got married, she had been slowly, methodically, making every shared space her own. I had watched it happen in small ways for years. I had said nothing because she was Derek's wife, and Derek loved her, and I had wanted to keep the peace. But Margaret's quilt was damp. "I want you both out of this house by Friday," I said. Sandra laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a dismissive one. The way you laugh at something you're certain won't happen. "Victor, the foundation work at our house won't be done until—" "That is not my concern. Derek, talk to your father." Derek looked at me, then at his wife, then back at me. "Dad, let's all just calm down. You just got back from a hard trip. You're upset about Uncle Raymond. Can we just eat dinner and talk about this reasonably?" "I am completely reasonable." Friday, I went upstairs. I took a shower. I got into bed and I looked at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the murmur of voices below me in the kitchen, the clink of silverware, the sound of my grandchildren, who I hadn't even seen yet, running across floors that were mine. I did not sleep much. The next morning I called Carl Hutchins, my neighbor, who was also a retired attorney. We'd been friends for 32 years. He'd helped me draw up Margaret's estate documents. He knew my house, my workshop, my history with this property better than anyone alive now that Raymond was gone. I told him everything. Carl was quiet while I talked. Then he said, "Vic, you know I've been watching them come and go over the past few months." "I know. Sandra's had some people in and out. I noticed a woman I didn't recognize come by twice with what looked like appraisal forms." I sat with that for a moment. Appraisal forms. I could be wrong about what they were. But they walked the property. Both times. After I hung up with Carl, I went to my filing cabinet. I keep everything. Tax records, insurance, warranties, every document related to this house going back to the day I bought it in 1988. I went through the relevant files carefully. The deed was there, in my name. Everything was where it should be, but there was something else. In the back of the drawer where I kept recent correspondence, there was a manila envelope I didn't recognize. I pulled it out. Inside was a document, a quitclaim deed, partially filled out, with my name on the grantor line and Derek and Sandra's names on the grantee line. It wasn't notarized. It wasn't signed. But someone had filled it out. Someone had printed this document and placed it in my filing cabinet. I set it on the desk and stared at it. My hands were steady. I was 63 years old. I had buried my wife. I had buried my brother. I had managed engineering projects involving hundreds of people and millions of dollars. I did not rattle easily, but I felt something cold move through me, slow and certain, like water finding a crack. I picked up my phone and called Carl back. Carl came over that afternoon. I showed him the document. He put on his reading glasses and went through it line by line, the way only lawyers and engineers read things, which is to say completely. "This is a standard quitclaim form," he said. "Available online. Whoever filled this in knew what they were doing, technically. But it's not worth anything without your signature and a notary. What it tells you is intent." "Sandra," I said, "or someone she hired to advise her." Carl took off his glasses. "Vic, I want to say something to you as your friend, not as your attorney." "Go ahead. These past few months, since they've been here, have you signed anything? Any documents Sandra asked you to look at? Anything Derek said was routine? Medical proxy, financial power of attorney, anything?" I thought carefully. "No, nothing." Carl nodded slowly. "Good." He looked at the quitclaim form. "I'd like to take this with me if you don't mind. Make a copy. And I want you to do something for me." "What's that?" "Don't say anything to either of them about this document yet. Go about your normal routine. Let me make some calls." I agreed. What I also did, and I want to be honest about this because it matters to the story, was go to a store that afternoon and buy a small digital recorder. Not for any dramatic purpose, simply because I am an engineer, and engineers document things. I am 63 years old, and I know that memory is fallible and that the world rewards people who can produce evidence. I put the recorder in my shirt pocket. That evening at dinner, Sandra sat across from me and smiled and passed the bread basket and asked about Raymond's service. She was warm. She was gracious. She was everything a daughter-in-law should be on the surface. Derek was relieved that the morning's tension seemed to have passed. My grandchildren, Lily and Noah, climbed on me after dinner the way they always did, and I held them and felt the particular pain of loving people through the people who came with them. After the kids were in bed, Sandra poured 2 glasses of wine and sat down at the kitchen table in a way that signaled she wanted a conversation. Derek sat beside her. "Victor," she said, "I want to apologize for yesterday. I overstepped with the workshop. I know those are Margaret's things and I should have asked first. I'm genuinely sorry." I said, "Thank you. I want to talk to you about something, though. Something Derek and I have been discussing for a while now." She glanced at my son, who gave a small nod as if on cue. "This house is too big for one person. 4 bedrooms, the workshop, all this yard. You're 63. Margaret's been gone for 4 years. We've been thinking, and tell me if this is too forward, that it might make sense for us to be here more permanently. For all of us." "All of us," I repeated. "We could convert the workshop into a proper in-law suite for you. You'd have your own space, your privacy. We'd handle the maintenance, the utilities, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about the house at all." I looked at her. I looked at my son. Derek was staring at the table. "So, you would like to move into the main house," I said, "and I would live in the workshop." "It wouldn't be the workshop anymore. It would be a proper, my wife's belongings are on the ground outside because you needed the space." Sandra's expression didn't change. Not exactly, but something behind her eyes did. A slight recalibration. "That was a mistake." I said I was sorry. "My wife built her life in this house," I said. "She planted every plant on that porch. She chose the wallpaper in the dining room. She died in the bedroom upstairs where I slept last night. This is not a property to be divided. This is my home." Sandra set down her wine glass. The warmth was fading now, replaced by something more businesslike. "Victor, eventually this house becomes Derek's anyway. You know that. We're just talking about moving that timeline forward in a way that benefits everyone. That is an extraordinary thing to say to me 3 days after I buried my brother. I'm just being honest with you. Derek has tried to bring this up before, and you always change the subject. We have 2 children in a house with a cracked foundation. We need stability. We need space. And this house belongs to me, for now," she said, quietly. Not a threat exactly, just a statement of what she believed to be an inevitable fact. The recorder in my shirt pocket was running. I stood up from the table. I am not a tall man, I'm 5'10". Same as I've been since I was 19, but I have never needed height to take up space in a room. Margaret used to say I had what she called still water presence, the kind of quiet that made people wait to see what I would do next. "I want to tell you both something," I said, "and I'd like you to listen carefully." Derek looked up. "I came home 2 days ago to find this house rearranged, my workshop emptied, and your mother's belongings left outside to get rained on. I found a quitclaim deed in my filing cabinet with my name on it that I did not put there and did not sign." Sandra's face went very still. "I have spent 35 years in this house. I raised a son here. I cared for my wife here, through 2 years of illness. I have paid every mortgage payment, every property tax, every utility bill. I have earned, in every possible sense of that word, the right to live here in peace." I paused. "You have until Friday. That has not changed." Victor, Derek started. "That document in my filing cabinet," Sandra said carefully. "I don't know what you're—" "Carl Hutchins has a copy of it." The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Sandra looked at Derek. Derek looked at his hands. Nothing was ever going to be done with that, Derek said finally. His voice had gone quiet in a way I recognized it was the voice he'd used as a teenager when he'd been caught in something and knew it. It was just something we were looking into. Legally, to understand our options. Your options, I repeated. It's not like we were going to forge your signature, Dad. I looked at my son for a long moment. He was 40 years old. I had been there when he took his first steps on the kitchen floor, 12 feet from where we were sitting. I had taught him to throw a baseball in the backyard. I had driven through the night when he called me crying from his college dorm because a girl had broken his heart. I had, as best I could, tried to be the kind of father a man could stand beside for his whole life. I know you weren't going to forge it, I said. But you knew it existed, and you said nothing to me. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I went to bed. I slept better that night than I had since before Raymond got sick. The next morning I called my daughter-in-law's parents. I had their number. I'd never had reason to use it before. Her father, Martin, answered on the second ring. He was 70, a retired postman from Columbus, Ohio, the kind of straight-talking Midwestern man I had always instinctively respected. I told him what was happening, calmly and in full. There was a long silence on his end. I had a feeling something wasn't right, he said. Sandra's been different this past year. Stressed. They've got more debt than she lets on, I think. I'm not calling to cause trouble in your family, I said. I'm calling because I think someone who knows her and loves her ought to know what's been happening. You're a good man, Victor, Martin said. I'm sorry about this. That same morning, Carl came over with two things. First, a formal letter from his office confirming my sole ownership of the property and requesting that Derek and Sandra vacate by the end of the week. Second, information from a colleague in property law. The quitclaim form had been downloaded from a legal document website and partially filled out by someone accessing it from a device registered to Sandra's email address. Not prosecutable. Carl said she hadn't signed anything, hadn't filed anything, hadn't actually done anything illegal yet. But it was documented. It was on record. And we both understood it for what it was. I thanked him. He clapped me on the shoulder at the door. You doing okay, Vic? I'm doing fine, I said. And I meant it. Friday arrived clear and cold. The kind of Tennessee October morning that makes you understand why people stay in this part of the country, no matter what happens to them here. I was sitting on the porch with my coffee when Derek carried the first box to his car. He made 3 trips. Sandra made none. She was inside. I could hear her moving through rooms, and I wondered what she was feeling. I have never been the kind of man who wants other people to suffer, even people who have earned it. I hoped she was feeling something true, not guilt, necessarily, but clarity. The specific, uncomfortable clarity of seeing yourself honestly. My grandchildren came out in their jackets, Lily dragging a stuffed rabbit, Noah sleepy-eyed and quiet. Lily wrapped herself around my leg and looked up at me. Grandpa, why are we leaving? I lifted her up onto my knee. Because your house is going to be all fixed up soon, sweetheart. And then you'll have your own rooms again. Will we still come visit you? Every chance I'll get. She leaned her head against my chest, and I held her and watched Derek load the last of their things. He came up on the porch before they left. He didn't say anything for a moment. We looked out at the yard together, at the old oak, at Margaret's rose beds along the fence line, which I had kept up because she would have wanted me to. I should have told you about the quitclaim form, he said. Yes, it wasn't my idea. I know. I had known that for years, in various versions, with various situations. It had always been easier for my son to be carried along than to push against the current. That was something between him and his own conscience, not between him and me. I love you, Derek. He put his hand on my shoulder briefly. I love you too, Dad. They pulled out of the driveway at 10:15. Carl watched from his porch across the street and raised his coffee mug at me. I raised mine back. I spent the rest of that morning in my workshop. I brought Margaret's quilts in first and checked each one carefully. The damp corner had dried. The double wedding ring pattern was intact, all its small, careful stitches holding, the way it had held through 80 years before I came along. and would hold long after me. I refolded it the way Margaret had shown me once, the way her mother had shown her. Then I put it back in its labeled box and set it back on its shelf. I reassembled my workbench. I put my father's hand planes back in their proper place, edged down on the padded rack. I found my grandfather's level in the pile on the floor, miraculously unbroken, and hung it where it belonged. Then I sat down on the stool by the wood stove, which I'd gotten going while I worked, and I sat in the warmth of my own workshop in my own house on a Friday morning in October. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Exactly. Something quieter than that. The feeling of a room that is yours truly, only yours, settling back into the shape it was meant to hold. I picked up the dollhouse from the corner where Sandra had left it and pulled back the tarp. It was unharmed. 6 weeks of work. The little windows with their working shutters. The staircase I'd carved from a single piece of maple. Lily's birthday was in 3 weeks. I picked up my tools and got back to work. Some people wait their whole lives to learn that a home is not a thing you inherit or acquire or gradually occupy through presence and pressure. It is something you build with your hands, with your years, with the specific love of the people you have chosen and who have chosen you. My wife understood that. She knew it the way she knew everything important. Quietly. Completely. Without needing to say it. I understood it too. I had always understood it. I had just needed, one more time, to stand in my own doorway and refuse to move.